Hello, it's me. I am the lady. Join me for the couch and the culture. Hey, clients, welcome back to the couch and the culture where therapy meets what's trending. I am Lakia, a licensed clinical social worker, and I hope that you are seated to join me as we talk through some of the biggest trends on social media, on reality television and scripted series, and really look at them through the lens of a therapist to see what it is that we can learn from these things. And hopefully, through all of this, we are destigmatizing therapy and mental health in the Black community specifically. All right, so we are ready to get started today, but of course, I have to give my disclaimers. Now, for those of you that watched the first video, you probably noticed I had quite a few disclaimers. Your girl ain't trying to get sued, trying to be misrepresented in any way. So I have to do that, but I'll try and keep them short. I don't want y'all to feel like it's the commandments of trying to book a hairstylist in 2025. So I'm gonna try and keep it brief. So
be brief.
Be brief. So the first disclaimer I have to give: these videos are intended to be educational. They are not a substitute for your own personal therapy. So again, share them with whoever you like, but please don't use this as a replacement for having your own personalized, tailored experience with a licensed mental health professional. Number two, I am only speaking on my behalf, so the views that I'm going to share are not going to represent the views of any past or present employers. It's not going to be any associations or organizations that I may be affiliated with, so just take that with a grain of salt. And no, I'm just speaking for me, boo. Number three, I do want this to be a very casual and relaxed setting. I know the first video we were talking about a pretty serious topic, so it was a bit more kind of buttoned up, so to speak, but I really want us to be able to have a relaxed, casual conversation. We don't have to worry about subject-verb agreement. It ain't gonna come out as if I were typing a paper. You've been warned. You're welcome. Again, this is supposed to be a very chill conversation for the culture. Because I am going to be talking about some people who are, I guess, considered public figures, I recognize that these are humans that I do not know personally. I've never met them. I've not assessed them. I'm not going to speak as if I do know some of the things that they may be dealing with directly. And anything I say is not intended to be a bashing of any of the people that I may use as reference throughout this. I'm really just using them as points of reference so you can see how everyday situations could be examined from a therapeutic lens. So hopefully that gets all of the disclaimers out of the way, and I really want us to get into the topics for today. As you all are getting to know me, you will clearly, probably quickly learn that I absolutely am a music head. I really feel like I process in song lyrics. So new music comes out. That's one of my favorite hobbies, is to be able to listen to break down music. And a new album that came out, Wale, Everything Is a Lie, it dropped, and he's one of the people that I really like to break down his lyrics. So I'm going through the track list and I get to a song called Power and Problems, and he has a lyric in there that immediately grabbed my attention. He said that therapy talk shit feel like backdoor extortion. And I pulled over like, now wait 1 minute, what do you mean talk therapy feels like backdoor extortion? So I had to sit with that for a little bit, and we're going to have a very real conversation that might shake the table if any of my social workers are watching this, but we're going to call a spade a spade. If we think about the history of therapy, especially for social workers, by license, I'm a social worker, so I can speak on kind of this particular area of practice. We don't always have the best track record for building trust. If I think about extortion, that's a very strong word. Usually, if I'm thinking about extortion, I am trying to gain something of value through coercion, through threats, through force. That is extortion. And again, if I think about the history that social work has within the community, if I think about kind of child protective services and the role of social workers in that historically, again, I don't want to overgeneralize, but historically, hasn't been the greatest means of building trust. If I think about, the school to prison pipeline and how a lot of times, sometimes teachers, counselors, if there are certain behaviors that are present for white students, it's kind of looked at as, oh, maybe they have ADHD, they have depression. But those same behaviors are present in black and brown kids, and it's a disruption. It's something that requires discipline. And we know that discipline early on a lot of times leads to prolonged exposure and involvement with authority, and we know what that means in terms of prison and pipeline. So again, not another great area of building trust from social workers. If I think about court-ordered treatments, where I can order you to be hospitalized against your will, that's not treatment, that's coercion. And yes, I understand there are times where it is absolutely necessary to protect someone's immediate safety. I have been in that role before, and I used to wrestle with that a lot. But again, if I'm just thinking about someone who maybe hasn't done a lot of therapy, or if I've had a negative experience with therapy or social workers in general, not something that's going to want me to engage in that later on down the line if that's my introduction. I think even more of an area where trust was broken between blacks and the mental health community or social workers, if we think about eugenics, if we specifically look in the state of North Carolina, thinking about like the 50s and 60s, so we're not talking about ancient history, this is just a few decades ago. If we think about forced sterilization there and how it disproportionately targeted black people, another reason why maybe you would think twice about social work or therapy. And you're probably wondering, well, I don't know the connection between that forced sterilization and a social worker. So in North Carolina, it used to be that women had to consent to be sterilized, and a lot of times they were referred to the board for this. It was social workers that were referring people to the board. It was social workers that ultimately would threaten to withhold welfare benefits, services that people needed for survival. They would threaten to withhold those things if they didn't consent to the sterilization. Over 7,000 people, and again, disproportionately impacted black women. So we have example after example after example of why it may feel like talking to a clinician would be extortion. Now, putting all of that in context, I felt more connected to what Wale was saying, and I said, okay, I guess he might have been onto something. I can understand that perspective. And it really kind of led me down this rabbit hole for today's video of why is it that black people don't do therapy? I know this is probably going to be heavily generalized. Bear with me. I understand there's a lot more nuance, but for the sake of what we're discussing today, we'll kind of talk in general terms and reasons why maybe black people aren't so excited about the idea of therapy. So maybe the first reason is to think about kind of our history. We have been in survival mode from the time we entered the Americas, right? If we think about slavery, we think about segregation, we think about just trying to secure housing, clothing, make a living wage. If we're so busy in survival mode, when does thinking about my feelings come into the picture? Thinking about feelings sounds like a luxury and a privilege that we haven't always necessarily had. So that's something to keep in mind when we're thinking about, oh, black people don't go to therapy. Next thing I want us to think about, the impact of generational trauma. So again, if we start with slavery, segregation, and we know the history of people being pulled apart from their families, kind of forced into labor in hostile situations, that trauma doesn't just disappear because, oh, slavery's illegal now. That trauma gets passed down from generation to generation. Some of the coping strategies we had to survive, we pass those things down. And so thinking about that, the way we maybe thought we needed to survive and earn money, those things, again, get passed down from generation to generation, that we don't think about seeking therapy as a means of helping us to unlearn some of those things. I want us to kind of pause for a second, and this is where we introduce our other pop culture thing for today. If we remember loving hip hop, when Lil Scrappy was talking to his mom and Bambi about kind of his upbringing and how it's influenced his ability to talk to people and who he feels he can confide in. It was a really deep conversation than what we would expect on a love and hip hop episode, but I want us to kind of pause and refresh our memories about that, to kind of use that in context.
I grew up in a whorehouse. I grew up in a trap house. The way I was raised, I had to deal with it. Cause everything that happened, I had to deal with that. Because like this in my head. And I can't even go to her, she hard. I can't go to you hard.
If we are looking at that clip and he says, I can't come to you, I can't go to you because y'all so hard. This kind of defense mechanism, this means of survival and protection, this kind of hardened shell a lot of times that we've put up, it stops us from really being able to do some of those higher level processing things like understanding my emotions, being able to eloquently communicate and express those emotions now that I can put my finger on what it is and understand it. So another reason why maybe we're not always thrilled to go to therapy. The other thing, a lot of times we think about the access to care, right? We've all probably heard like, oh, that's some rich people stuff, or like, that's for white people. All the reasons we've probably heard as to why therapy's not really for us. Again, the access to care. Will providers take insurance? Will they take my insurance? If they don't, can I afford to pay out of pocket for, again, this luxury item? In a lot of places, I still have to get a referral from my primary care doctor to even be able to go to therapy if it's going to be covered by insurance. Do I necessarily feel comfortable talking to my general practitioner about what it is that I may be seeking therapy for? Maybe not. So maybe they're not seeing the purpose in initiating this referral, or maybe they do, and by the time it takes me to get in with someone, once I go through the wait list, see who's available in my area, it can be super discouraging. So another reason why sometimes we don't always love the thought of therapy. Also, concerns about the right fit, right? Maybe I've heard horror stories from other people, or I've gone to see one person and it just wasn't my vibe. Speaking from personal experience, I can remember times where I was seeking my own personal therapist and feeling like, okay, either I've outgrown this person because some of the things I'm asking for assistance with processing, maybe they are earlier on into their career and haven't really dealt with this, or maybe the type of therapy that they're accustomed to practicing doesn't really mesh well with what it is that I'm seeking. So even for me, when I'm looking for a therapist, it can be like dating, trying to vet the right person to make sure that we're gonna gel, because ultimately this is a relationship. I need to trust them and they need to feel like they can kind of talk openly with me about what it is they're assisting with. With vetting, right, even when we talk about that process, we don't always know what are the questions I should be asking when I'm looking for a therapist. It's like, I don't know what I don't know, so I don't necessarily know what to ask, right? Maybe I don't have the emotional vocabulary to talk with them when they're like, well, why is it that you're seeking a therapist? Maybe I haven't learned the language to be able to describe it myself, so that may make it also really, really hard to find the right fit. Again, if I don't know what questions to ask, I haven't built that vocabulary, it can be super difficult. Another reason why maybe sometimes we are not interested in therapy, the misconception on what therapy is, who's providing it, and what it's going to be like. I know a lot of times we have this image in our head of, oh, it's going to be this older white person, they're not going to be able to understand. I don't want to spend all that time, really helping them learn my culture before we can even get into the meat of why I'm there. Valid concerns, but again, that's part of the vetting process that sometimes I have to be willing to kind of wade through and navigate. Also, maybe there's this concern of they're going to ask me a million times, how does that make you feel? Can't stand it, right? Again, it's just like, are you patronizing me? Like, what do you think that made me feel like, right? It can get super frustrating if that's all they're going to ask me. Or all they want to do is make me write. And I'm like, lady, I came to you to talk. I don't want to write anything down. Help me, okay? That can be challenging. This belief that they're paid to listen to me. We're going to pull over and have a conversation about this one right here because I hear this a lot. So this idea that therapists are paid to listen to you, to a degree, that is correct. Part of them earning their paycheck to provide this service as a therapist, they need to be excellent listeners. So that's a requirement that they're going to have to listen to you. The compassion, the empathy, there is no charge that you can put on that. So yes, we may be paid to listen, but the care and the concern and the gentle way in which maybe I help guide you through some of those things, that's not what they're paid for. So keeping that in mind. There's maybe also the concern that if I go to therapy, they're going to try and diagnose me with something. They may misdiagnose me with something. They may try and push medications on me. I'm not interested in that, or maybe I'm against taking medication. Common reasons I hear for why people may not want to go to therapy. The other thing, there's maybe the concern that, oh, I'm somehow like, I don't want to say like cheating on my religion, but I'm devaluing my religion if I'm seeing a therapist. A lot of times there's this belief of, oh, just pray about it. Oh, if you trust God, God will take care of it. And this is in no way meant to shade anybody who may feel that way. But I think if you have this belief that God is the person that's doing this, especially if you're a Christian, you know the scripture, faith without works is dead. Baby, go to therapy and do the work. You can have God and a therapist. It's okay. They really can complement each other well. So if that's you, if that's kind of some of the thoughts that you've heard about maybe why you're against going to therapy, just give it a chance and see if maybe, oh, through talking to my therapist, maybe this deepened my spiritual beliefs and practices, or it aligned well. So don't completely rule it out. And there are also some therapists who practice like Christian counseling who are licensed, but who also have a strong background in the faith, or those who may be questioning their faith. So again, not all therapists are going to be qualified to do the same things. And so that's part of that vetting process again, and maybe knowing what question to ask if that's something that's important to you. Sometimes I hear people say that they don't trust strangers. Like, are they going to tell my business? They are bound to protect your confidentiality unless you are in imminent risk of harm to yourself or someone else, or there's a clear known report that a minor or a disabled person or elder is being abused or neglected. Otherwise, what you share, legally they cannot share with anyone else without your consent. So keep that in mind as well. Another reason maybe why we don't hear that, this thought of like, oh, I should be strong enough or capable to deal with this myself, or if I'm talking to someone outside of myself, like I'm less than. This actually brings me to a really good pausing point as well to pull in some recent pop culture things. So one of my favorite podcasts is The Pivot. Again, I love all things sports, all things music. So The Pivot is one of the podcasts I really enjoy watching. And there was an episode with Young Thug on there. And we're just gonna let the clip kind of speak for itself.
She was telling my girl that, like, I don't think you need a therapist. I don't think I need a therapist. I feel like I'm not a man if my girl get a therapist. It's like, damn, you actually call somebody and listen to what they got to say over me instead of just listening to what I'm telling you. I just feel less of a man.
So if we listen to what Thug was saying, that he feels like less of a man if his girl has to go to someone else to listen to her. I'm not going to bash Thug for that belief. I'm not even going to try and point out the reasons that I may disagree with that sentiment. Instead, I want to try and educate a little bit. Therapists are there to serve as an objective point of view, right? Think of it as a sounding board, right? If you're an artist, you make beats, songs, whatever, usually you may make something and then you'll have someone else who you know has a really good ear for it kind of weigh in on it. Does that mean that you're less of an artist or producer if someone else has to kind of give you their opinion on it? No. Sometimes it can be good to get out of your own head and hear someone else's thoughts kind of coming in with that fresh perspective. Therapy really is a great place to be able to do that. And if within my relationship I don't feel like my partner should have that access to that, I think that's another conversation we need to be having. I don't think that his perspective is necessarily one that's uncommon, so I thought it would be helpful for us to look at that as another reason why, again, we may not always want to go to therapy or be interested in that. The other thing is maybe I have the belief that my therapist isn't going to be able to relate to me, whether it is they don't look like me, whether it is they've never experienced the things that I'm going through, whether it's, they don't know what it is to have a miscarriage, or they don't know what it is to be a celebrity and in the public eye. Maybe there are specific things that I'm coming to them for, and I'm concerned about their immediate connection to those things. And if we pull over right here, again, I think this is another recent podcast moment where this is relevant. So unapologetically Angel, love her down, but she had Mona Leo on an episode and they briefly touched on therapy. So let's take a moment to listen to this clip.
Did you feel like that was like your therapy? Because I feel like Black people struggle with like going to like finding therapists, even with myself, because no one will understand what we go through, or nobody will understand you talking to a therapist and paying a therapist and telling them your problems. They're going to tell you what you want to hear,
right?
But like they're not really ever going to really understand, especially at the level that we're at.
You're saying
like,
that about a therapist?
Yeah, that's what I feel.
You'll be surprised.
Really,
you would be surprised.
Really?
Recently I've been going to premarital. Well, before I got married, I was going to premarital counseling, and you'll be surprised. Number one, they have a way and a method to psychoanalyzing and making sense of a lot of the things that don't make sense to you in your mind. So I feel like you just need somebody to connect those dots for you in a scientific way. And that for me personally helped. They don't have to be an artist or they don't have to be famous to understand it. It's just like, I'm a human being at the end of the day. So I try not to add that added layer of like, oh, I'm famous or I'm a rapper, I'm this, because I don't feel like they ultimately have to understand that to be able to help me get to from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So I think have you been to therapy?
No.
I think you should try it.
Yeah.
I would, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm saying I think you should try it though. I think you might like it.
Did it take you a while to find somebody?
It's a process.
Yeah.
It's like dating.
Yeah.
And so if we think about Angel's thoughts of like, oh, they're just paid to tell you what you want to hear. In the same way that we sometimes think, oh, they're just paid to listen and they're not going to really be objective or kind of keep it real with you. It can be important to normalize that therapists aren't there to tell you what you want to hear. And if you do feel that that's what's happening, try and address it with your provider first. And if there's no change, maybe that's not the right therapist that you need to be seeing. Because they should not just be there saying what you want to hear. I don't want to pay somebody to be a yes man. And I would imagine those of you watching probably wouldn't either. So that should not be the objective. And I love how Mona Leo handled her response to Angel. It was in a very kind of kind and compassionate way. But she offered a different perspective on it and saying, no, I think therapy can be really helpful to help you connect some things that maybe you didn't even realize were connected, and get a different perspective on this. So shout out to the two of them, especially Mona Leo, for how she handled that response. But again, Angel's thought about this, not uncommon, especially if I think about, again, public figures who may be in the spotlight and are concerned that if I'm going to talk to somebody, maybe they're going to be starstruck. They're not going to be able to keep it real with me. They're not going to want to upset me or tell me whatever I want to hear. Just consider finding that right fit. And usually when we think about the right fit, a lot of times we think about people who may look like us. The reality is a lot of Black people want to know, am I going to be able to find a provider who looks like me, who understands that if I say like, oh, I heard my dead relative's voice talking to me, they're not going to be writing down like, oh, they're hallucinating, they're delusional, right? you understand because maybe you have a similar culture or background. But the problem is, and I'm going to read this statistic for you guys. According to the American Psychology Association, only 5% of U.S. psychologists were Black. In 2022, the Association of Black Psychologists teamed up with the Black Psychiatrists of America and the National Association of Black Social Workers to create a Black mental health workforce survey. They found that only 2% of psychiatrists are Black, 22% of social workers are Black, 7% of marriage and family counselors Black, and 11% of professional counselors or LPCs are Black. So if we're looking at those numbers, it can be really discouraging, like, oh, am I going to find someone who looks like me, who understands the culture that I can talk to? And it's part of the reason that I wanted to join the profession when I was thinking about careers. I want people to feel like there's someone who looks like them, who understands the culture, that they can process their experiences with. The last thing we talked about, maybe the religious component, maybe the concern about the relatability, the access to care, if someone looks like me, if a stranger is going to tell my business, if I'm less than a person, the historical context and kind of generational context, all of the things, right? And I'm sure I probably missed even more than that on reasons maybe why we don't go to therapy. But I wouldn't be in this seat if I didn't kind of give us the alternative perspective, maybe some of the benefits and reasons we should consider going to therapy. So if we think about what the point of therapy is, maybe someone's helping me learn how to identify what it is that I'm feeling, right? Maybe they're helping me establish that vocabulary that I don't have yet because I'm not used to talking about my feelings. Maybe they're telling me about how to manage stress, how to self-soothe, how to cope with what it is to be a Black person in America and the stress that in itself can bring. Maybe they're helping me process those things. Maybe they're helping me with my self-esteem, my confidence. They're helping me try and find ways to care for myself because maybe I don't really know what self-care is. Maybe I have this kind of cliche thought of, oh, let me get a mani and a pedi and that's self-care. When the reality is, it may look very different for every person. So maybe that's something I'm learning in therapy. Maybe I'm learning about my parenting style, my attachment style, which we'll likely have a whole other video on that at another time. Or they're helping me to improve my communication. So if we pause here to, again, look at one of my favorite shows in recent times, there were conversations on the Netflix show Forever that actually talked about therapy. So if we pause for a moment to listen to these clips, we'll come back and talk about it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm not going to take up much more of your time. I just want you to know that I'm here. And honestly, therapy can do wonders.
What?
That did not come out right.
Okay, this is a lot.
You know, what I'm trying to share with you is that therapy has done wonders for my family. Well, for me, therapy has done wonders. For me, I've come a long way. Got a long way to go still, but apparently I have a catastrophic parenting style. Damn near have a panic attack if my child wears a hoodie.
Okay, this sounds like an AA meeting.
Girl.
I talked to a therapist. Should have made a sex tape sooner. I don't play with me. Sorry. It was a short consultation, but I think I like her. Your boyfriend's mom gave me her number. No, don't roll your eyes. Because if it wasn't for her, who knows how long you would have kept lying to me.
For life? After all you've done for me, I didn't want you to have to go through this.
You made a mistake. You're a kid. You should be able to make a mistake. I made a mistake, too. I thought that the worst thing that could happen was you getting pregnant. I tried to shield you from that by scaring you. I realized I didn't create an environment where you felt safe enough to come to me with something like this.
Was that your therapist?
Yeah. I like her.
So looking at those clips, I really love that Keisha's mom, you know, she had a very honest response to Justin's mom when she was like, this sounds like a lot, right? The initial skepticism. And again, how Justin's mom wasn't coming from a place of judgment, but she talked about how therapy has personally benefited her, especially in her parenting style, and ways that she's kind of learning to approach this from a new angle. And then we get to see the evidence just from that conversation to then Keisha and her mom having a discussion about, you know, maybe I haven't created these safe spaces for you to be able to share things with me that you were concerned about. Instead, I was so focused on survival, so focused on you not getting pregnant, because that's the worst thing that can happen in my mind, that I didn't create the opportunity for us to have these raw discussions and you feel comfortable talking to me. And if that is something that maybe you felt growing up or you're worried about with your child as you're parenting, something that therapy may be beneficial for you to learn and process and work through. Maybe in coming to therapy, I learned how to have healthy boundaries with people. I say all the times, the relationship between you and your therapist should really be one that sharpens your ability to communicate and set boundaries, right? Hopefully they're modeling effective communication, appropriate boundaries, and so that's being modeled in that relationship, and then I'm able to kind of take that beyond the walls of the session and use that in my day-to-day life. Again, maybe it helps me with communication, boundaries, my attachment style, parenting, learning how to have an emotional vocabulary, learning how to self-soothe and take care of myself, learning how to better cope and process stress. But another thing, therapy doesn't have to always be in times of crisis. It can also be there to help refine and improve some of the skills I already have. I don't have to be in crisis to go see a therapist. So keep that in mind. So in thinking about maybe some of the reasons I may benefit from actually seeing a therapist, you may be wondering, how do I actually get this process started? How do I find the right fit for me? So I would say, number one, think about what it is you're looking for when you want to go to therapy. Is it that I am, you know, entering adulting, right? I'm maybe graduating high school or college and I want someone to kind of help me process all of the new things that may be happening. Am I there to try and deal with grief, the loss of a job, a relationship that's challenging? Maybe I do have some childhood wounds that I want to work on. So what is it that I am looking for as a starting point for therapy? From there, I can look into a directory to try and find a provider. So whether that's Therapy for Black Girls that has their provider directory, therapyforblackmen.org, which also has a provider directory, cliniciansofcolor.org, or even Psychology Today. If I filter in the background of the clinician that I'm looking for, that could be a good starting point. Once I do that, request consultations. Don't just immediately say I have to go with the first person that's available. Send a message requesting a consultation just to say, hey, I'm trying to make sure that this is actually the appropriate fit. Not every therapist is skilled in every area. Not all of them can handle substance use or eating disorders or dealing with very specific things. So if I know that, let me have a consultation. What are some of the questions I can ask in that consultation? Asking them, you know, number one, what's their availability like? Are they in person? Are they virtual? Are they accepting new clients? What is the availability for consistent follow-up? I don't want to just be able to have my initial appointment with you and then I can't follow up for 3 months. What are their areas of expertise, right? What is their therapy style? Are they more kind of chill, relaxed, or are they going to take the very textbook approach and want to give me all of the scientific things and it's not in a way that I can understand, right? What are the things that influence their background and their therapy style the most, right? Is it that they really love working with adolescents? Do they really have an emphasis for maybe people who have complex medical issues, people who may be reintegrating into society from, you know, incarceration, military life, right? There are so many areas of emphasis, and I need to have an understanding of that when I'm trying to get paired with someone. Any therapist that tells you they can treat any issue, run, because it's not the case. So yeah, think about those things. And I say this, we don't always know the questions to ask if we've not ever gone through this process before. I am so open for you all putting comments in this video to let me know, like, hey, is it appropriate to ask this question, or what are some other questions to ask? I want this to be an engaging process. Like, think of me as like a curbside consult, right? You should be able to know what are the things I can ask if I'm wanting to get matched with a therapist. So I hope this video was helpful for you, that maybe it answered some questions, gave a little bit of extra insight, maybe encouraged you to want to start or restart your journey in therapy. But yes, thank you for joining another episode of The Couch and the Culture. As I did in my last video, I brought us in with a song. I'm going to take us out with a song. If you are needing just kind of some feel-good, self-soothing music, I would recommend Natalie Lauren. She has a song called God Morning, and it's talking about how I show up for myself. So that'll be the gem I drop on you guys today. And again, I hope to see you guys back the next time on another episode of The Couch and the Culture. So until next time, bye-bye, clients.